and today we're going to be going over the Hummer EV battery pack.
Question: what's big, heavy, ugly, sucks harder than a vacuum, and isn't your girlfriend? In today's video, we'll be answering that question, care of the folks over at Munro Associates, who've torn down the amazing Ultium battery inside GM's flagship electric vehicle, the gigantic Hummer EV. This is yet another insight into Tesla's so-called competition, who continue, in fact even today, to announce new products, new vehicles, and lots of plans. But as we know, plans aren't a strategy, and you can tell your investors and your customers anything you want. You can even lie to them, manipulate and mislead them. But what you cannot hide is your engineering, the stuff under the hood. Time to expose GM, who still are doubling down on their claims that they'll be overtaking Tesla in EV sales in the United States sometime soon. If you say so. And quick heads up, stay tuned for some exclusive subscriber-only content on Twitter and a new Patreon video. The topics discussed in those videos dropping soon include how not to think, featuring a well-known member of the Tesla community and possibly somebody who manages money for other people, plus an insight into the absolutely insane numbers of the gaming industry. Check the links in the pinned comment. You can subscribe to Twitter, join Patreon. Stay tuned for those videos dropping very soon.
This pack itself, as dropped from the vehicle, was about 1,278 kilograms. So that's somewhere on the order of over 2,500 pounds.
To put that in context, that weighs even more than your girlfriend. I'm just kidding. I know you don't have a girlfriend.
So this, as far as the battery packs that we've torn down, is extremely heavy. The entire construction is comprised of stamped steel, which, Antonio, typically when we tear down a battery pack, we expect to see some level of aluminum in the enclosure, as well as some inclusion of either castings or extrusions.
Right, because with electric vehicles, your primary driver is efficiency. So rolling resistance, your aerodynamics, all these things are being considered to improve the mileage that you get at the end of a vehicle. So if you can reduce weight, you reduce your rolling resistance, you reduce your drag. I mean, the Hummer is a bit of a barn on wheels, so they're not worried about aero, but
Right.
They can still take care of the rolling resistance. Then again, this thing also has massive tires, so they're not maybe concerned about rolling resistance either.
Right.
But weight can be reduced to help with that a little bit, and they don't seem to be concerned about that much either, because this is a small car.
Right.
Without wheels.
Yeah, so yeah, this the battery pack alone, it was a chore in and of itself to figure out how to remove it from the vehicle. Typically, we work with battery packs that are a fraction of this size and weight, so that was a challenge in and of itself.
I'm already getting the sense these guys are trying to pick their words fairly delicately, but already not a pretty picture. Extremely heavy. And then we go on to discover that it's so fucking heavy it weighs as much as some vehicles do. Not only that, they had to go out of their way to remove the battery pack because it's so goddamn big. You guys ever seen a video where an obese person has a medical emergency and they have to fucking knock walls out of their house and use a crane to get them? Yeah, that's pretty much what they needed to do with this battery pack. Not looking pretty.
Comes to about 257 fasteners just with the pack itself. Inside we have, again, kind of a unique configuration here. What we effectively have is two 400-volt battery packs packaged in parallel with one another. So we see here, we have the upper layer carrier, which is a separate stamped assembly. This is comprised of about 105 discrete stamped components that are a combination of laser, projection, and MIG welded together. This is to accommodate the upper level, which contains 12 battery modules on its own. And with this removed, we would then see similar lateral stamped cross members in the base tray itself, which would be effectively inside this entire perimeter here. That then contains an additional 12 modules. This main housing is, I believe, comprised of 139 independent stamp components that are then laser projection MIG welded together. And spot welded together as well. So there's quite a high component count here.
Is anyone keeping count? I think we're already past 420 quintillion different individual components just in the battery pack. What's that saying? The best part is no part? I think GM thinks the best part is all the parts.
I mean, you can see just looking at everything that's comprising this front here, typically in something that would be of a similar geometry, we'd usually expect to see maybe a front piece like this where there's a more complex geometry, some curvature, might be cast aluminum, then running out to side rails that are made of an aluminum extrusion. But here, every single bit of this is stamped steel. And Antonio, there would be obviously a cost advantage to that. You have to do a little bit more processing because there's so much welding going on. I believe throughout just the housing itself, there's over 3,500 welds of one form or another.
I'm noticing a theme already. Unnecessary complexity. Now, I don't want to pan the GM engineers because they may be very great engineers, but they've also produced this. Maybe there were time constraints, maybe there were budget constraints, or maybe they put the F team on it. GM doesn't have any A or B players, so the C, D, and E players, they're all working on internal combustion engines, and maybe it was their F players, their F team was working on the Hummer. I really do get the sense these guys are trying to be delicate, but already, a few minutes in, this is an absolute dumpster fire of complexity. This is the same company who continue to double down on their claims, absurd claims, misleading claims, that they'll be overtaking Tesla in US EV sales just a few years from now. Yet, doesn't appear as though they know how to engineer an electric vehicle.
But when it comes to the processing, they might have actually lost out on cost because of how much extra stuff they've had to do. How many laser welds? How many welds were on this thing in total?
Between the upper layer carrier and the base tray assemblies, there were over 3,500 welds.
So almost 2 tons of welds.
Right. So there's a whole lot of processing going on here, and it's clear to see even
which
just from
we
the
saw
upper
something
layer.
very similar
However,
in
there
the F-150
in the
Lightning,
entire F-150
it had a
battery
separate,
pack. We relied a lot
carrier
on
for
aluminum,
its second layer,
and
especially
there's
for
effectively
the
a C
lateral
reinforcement
stamping,
and then an additional
C-shaped
C-shaped
stamping
with
underneath it,
some additional separate stamped brackets
corner,
for the
L-shaped
stamping,
something like
this has a high component count,
cross member itself,
whereas
to the base of
competitively we would have seen just an extrusion. So this is a unique execution compared to what we've seen.
Oh, what happened? I think I zoned out there, guys. What were they saying? Something about lots of complex shit. I don't know. At least I understood the end there. I kind of heard that. Unique execution. How to accurately describe what you're seeing without insulting the GM engineers who surely will hear about your teardown. Words matter. We can see this poor man searching for words that won't offend too many people. Unique execution. Indeed, this is an absolute clusterfuck.
The module contains 24 of the Ultium cells that are 3P8S. You also have them separated so that each one is over a mica covered vent. So set of 3, set of 3, set of 3, and if there's a thermal vent, it'll vent off. So inside the cooling plate strategy, we have a fair bit of very, very rigid adhesive. So this is actually kind of a sharp adhesive. You probably cut yourself on this after it's cured. Tortuous path surface. So that's kind of backwards what we normally see. You generally want a smooth surface to have contact with your cells for better thermal propagation. So they've done this backwards, and to counter it, they've just applied a large amount of adhesive.
So the entire battery pack itself, unique execution. Now we're getting a little bit closer. We're looking at the modules themselves, and apparently GM's engineers have engineered this kind of backwards to what you would normally see. I'm sure it's nothing. Looks like some extremely unique execution to me. How innovative of GM. They're so unique, extremely unique. In fact, you might even say backwards.
The disadvantage to having this uneven surface where your cells are mounting against is from a side view, effectively to ensure that all of the cells are making contact with the cooling surface, you need to even that out, and in order to even it out, you need to add more material in the areas where the surface is effectively lower, and a thinner layer where you have the channels stamped and closer to where the cell surface would be. And what that does is it creates uneven gap, and the thicker the layer you have to transfer heat through, the less effective your heat transfer will be. This also has a cost impact in that needing to flatten out the surface using the thermal interface material is going to incur greater use of that material.
And it's not cheap.
And typically this is not an uncostly material. This is significant. It's got to, in this instance, provide both structure and a thermal function. So that's additional cost that's incurred in addition to, and I don't think you touched on this, Antonio, the end injection molded caps or walls of the module itself are effectively planted and sunk into just a large amount of the same kind of adhesive. And you can see from the side view that it's, again, not an insignificant amount. Inside this channel, there is an incredibly thick bead that's been laid that is really, there is no thermal function in this section of the cooling plate and what's mating to it. They've effectively just used it as potting to anchor an injection molded component. So there may have been another way to do that.
It's painful to watch. He's trying to be so delicate with his words here. There may have been another way to do that isn't fucking brain dead. And in the defense of the GM engineers who worked on this electric vehicle, it's very possible that this is a non-serious attempt from GM because they're not really serious about electric vehicles, despite what they're telling their dumbass investors just to pump the stock up. So it's possible that the brief was, please just make something. Doesn't need to be well engineered, doesn't need to be profitable. In fact, it can be a steaming pile of excrement because we're not actually serious about this and we don't plan on selling very many. Oh, by the way, how many Hummer EVs did GM deliver in the first quarter of 2023? Can someone remind me? I'm pretty sure you could count it on half a hand. It was like 3? Was it 3 or 2? I can't remember. Something like that. Either way, what a mess.
But using a material like this in that amount for an application such as just anchoring an injection molded component, a component that doesn't need to be cooled, that's fairly atypical, and it's definitely going to be a cost driver with this component.
Right. So
I'm getting endless entertainment from this teardown. Fairly atypical. And obviously there's a massive cost associated with it. So it's not just different, but it's different and real fucking expensive. So why would you do something that's different and real fucking expensive when there's something that's the same and not fucking expensive? Good question. Don't know what GM's answer would be.
another interesting feature was the back of the current collectors here have these injection molded strips covering a non-uniform surface. So big question we had is, why is this even covered? Why not just mold this as a flat piece? We're not sure.
So obviously the only logical conclusion, if Munro Associates, while tearing down this battery pack and looking at the actual modules, are not sure as to why GM have done something, it's obviously because Munro Associates are dumb, not because GM are dumb and have done something that doesn't make sense. If only GM could explain why they've done what they've done, I'm sure there'll be a very reasonable explanation, right?
Right, and the separator itself, it looks simple at first.
Right, and yeah, actually, Antonio, we've got the one that we've pulled apart here if you want to go into a little more detail about how that's constructed.
So, first you have your foam layer, so that comes off. 3 pieces of tape hold that on. Underneath that is a polyethylene piece of tape, and under that is a sheet of metal. In between the sheets of metal are these foam strips of insulating material, another piece of metal, and then another piece of foam strip.
Right, so in all, just in the separator, there are 3 separate stamped sheets of aluminum, 2 sheets of a stamped, feels like a type of, what material do you think that might be?
It might just be a talc-filled polypropylene, but it is supposed to be an insulative material, so it's dusty. It's
And so there's a lot of complexity just inside this separator itself.
A lot of complexity. It seems the more Munro Associates tear down this Hummer battery pack and look into the modules, the more unnecessary complexity, not unnecessary, I mean unique, extremely unique complexity they find. I'm sure there's a very reasonable explanation as to why this is embarrassingly complicated. Unfortunately, GM don't really like to talk to people that can actually look at the engineering of their products, because that might be embarrassing for them, so they don't. But I'm sure they have a very reasonable explanation as to why this is incredibly embarrassingly, absurdly, atypically complicated and unnecessarily so, right?
Thermally conductive surface. Antonio, as far as the cell temperature sensing in modules goes, this again is a very atypical execution from what we've seen, yes?
Right, usually you have a couple points that are being measured, one at your hot point, one at your cold point, or the other option is to have on your thermal system, your turnaround point where you have your lowest delta between your hot and your cold.
Right.
So this looks like your turnaround point where they're measuring, but they're measuring between 2 cells, so maybe they're getting a hot spot and a cold spot. It's not really going to be a very good signature of the rest of the module.
Right, so to Antonio's point, effectively on either side of this injection molded piece, there would be a cell here and a cell here, both of which would be contributing to the temperature reading being picked up by that thermistor. Therefore, it's interesting to think, obviously, whatever testing and validation they did, that seems to be sufficient for their thermal management strategy. However, typically we've seen one thermistor on one cell, and there's no combining of temperature sources per sensor.
True.
A few seconds later, and another discovery of an atypical, unique execution, one that really doesn't seem to make sense to me. Now, just in case you guys are getting lost in the nerdy technical weeds here, the whole point of the temperature sensors on the batteries is to check the temperature of individual batteries to make sure they're not too fucking hot. GM has decided we don't need to do that. Instead, we're just going to take the average temperature of multiple cells at the same time. If one of your cells happens to be overheating, yet another cell connected to the same device monitoring the temperature of the cells is running cold, how do you know that you have a cell that's dangerously hot that could spontaneously combust and cause a battery fire? Oh wait, you don't know. I'm sure GM have a lot of good reasons for why they've done this. I'd love to know what they are. Let me give you guys an analogy just to drive the point home. Imagine if instead of taking your temperature, oh, I feel a bit sick, I want to check if I've got a fever, you put a fucking thermometer in the room and go, oh, the temperature in here seems fine, and use that to gauge whether or not you personally are too hot or not. The fuck are they? This hurts my brain.
But wait, there's more. We have another separator that goes between your outside plates and your cells. So this is for isolation, another big piece of double-sided tape, and yet again, more of your separating foam, which is a little bit thicker. So 3 types of separators. They didn't use the same one on as this foam here, so that could have been a save if they commonized that. And this piece of steel side is for your compression. So I understand why this is strong, but this is also many laser welds, many different stampings. I think 2 stampings, and then they're laser welded together. And it's just very robust.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, this is killing me. If you read between the lines here, bro, it's just very robust, as in they've used extremely expensive heavyweight material and a fuck ton too many things. It's just so complicated. Very robust. Unique execution indeed.
This guy is 103 amp hours, so there's a lot more energy just in this. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's what GM's big claim was. The Ultium cell is a new and great thing. All it really is a bigger gas tank. Mm-hmm. It just holds more. It's bigger. It's not really novel in any way.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. Them's fighting words. You just called out GM and their bullshit claim that their amazing Ultium platform isn't novel. Just a big fucking battery cell, which obviously has its own issues, which we'll save for another video, but believe me, we're going to see those issues arise, and GM will be abandoning plans for this technology. You can fucking count on it. Put that on the record and clip it. It's going to happen. For very obvious reasons, but, well, actually, they're not that obvious unless you're a total engineering nerd / an autist, but believe me, at some point in the future, GM's going to abandon their amazing Ultium technology in favor of more traditional 2170s, 4680 cells, and so on. Mark my words. You did it, Mary.
The one thing that was surprising to us upon opening the battery pack was the existence of not just the nylon lines, but the fact that just about every inch that wasn't on a fitting was covered in a reinforced, either with steel mesh, or I believe some of these had an aramid fiber in them, which again is fairly atypical.
There's that word again. Fairly atypical. Which obviously means GM are innovating and doing everything better and smarter than the rest of the industry, obviously.
The one thing that we theorized initially was if we take a look at the lid, which is just over here, the sealing of the lid to the battery tray itself was a fairly thick and substantial bead that was applied around the perimeter. As assembled, unlike some battery packs we've seen with a liquid applied seal from the lid to the tray, there was actually a slight gap that was left intentionally where this adhesive could be accessed, and one of our initial theories was potentially for easier servicing, there would be a gap left for some sort of tool, whether that's an ultrasonic knife or something, to cut through the adhesive around the perimeter to assist in cleaner lid removal that wouldn't incur as much damage as happened when we took ours off. And part of the thought was the reinforcement around the nylon lines could be to protect against whatever tool may be used to remove the lid so that there weren't any punctures in the lines or any leaks. However, that kind of reinforcement is present on the nylon lines that run both on the upper portion of the tray along the sides, but then also below for the bottom layer of the modules as well. So the theory is not necessarily as strong given that information. So the actual reason we're still a little bit unclear on. However, seeing that much reinforcement on the nylon lines inside the pack is fairly atypical, I would say. Well, there you go.
I sure hope Tesla has torn down a Hummer EV so they can take notes of all the atypical things GM have done better than Tesla does in their electric vehicles. because GM knows how to make internal combustion engine vehicles, and they're exactly the same thing as electric vehicles and should therefore be copied by Tesla. So yet another video of Tesla's competition coming, not for Tesla, but all over themselves. How embarrassing. Now, to be fair to GM, the Hummer EV is a non-serious attempt at electric vehicle. It's a high-priced, low-volume joke. Where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, will be when GM finally releases their first mass-market electric vehicle that they're intending on actually making a profit on. You thought you were going to get me there. Hey, what about the Bolt? For the record, GM's first mass-market electric vehicle was an entirely unprofitable project. It launched about the same time as Tesla's Model 3. Sold a fraction of the units, but many units, yet GM was unable to make a cent selling those vehicles. And that was attempt number one, a total fail. Maybe it was just a compliance car. One very important point for investors to understand, however, is you can't believe anything that comes out of the mouth of Mary B.S. Barra. The Ultium batteries are a fucking joke and they will be soon abandoned. The longer it takes GM to abandon their Ultium batteries, the further behind reality you'll realize they are. I'm not going to go there. They will be abandoning this form factor. You can count on it. Otherwise, they won't abandon it and they'll end up going bankrupt before they do. One of those two things is going to happen. If you guys want to watch the full teardown, check out the link. It clocks in at about half an hour. I just featured some key highlights here, trying to convey the amazing, atypical engineering that GM are currently capable of. Let's hope when GM takes the C, D, and E players instead of the F players and puts them onto an electric vehicle project, they can come up with something a little bit less embarrassing. But, as we know, hope is not a strategy. Oh, and I hate to be that guy, but you do realize that the batteries and the whole vehicle isn't actually the thing that really matters when it comes to electric vehicles. The engineering that counts most is the software engineering. But I'm sure GM will be fine in that regard. I mean, obviously, internal combustion engine engineers are also capable software engineers because that's how it works, right? Nothing to see here. Move along. For GM to even survive the next 5 years, they're going to need multiple back-to-back miracles to occur. I wouldn't be counting on that, although I do have a tip. Maybe GM can sponsor all their engineers with a little AG1 so they can develop slightly less atypical products. Athletic Greens AG1 has given me a massive, meaningful boost in energy, allowing me to do a lot more every day, including using my brain more and using my body more. I highly recommend you guys and girls check it out. Athletic Greens AG1 is an excellent way to fill in nutritional gaps. It's got 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food source nutrients, plus prebiotics and probiotics and digestive enzymes and adaptogens to help you deal with stress. Plus, if you click the link in the pinned comment or head to athleticgreens.com/SMR, you can get yourself a 1-year free supply of vitamin D3 and K2. But don't take my word for it. Here's what some of you guys and girls have to say. AG1 has changed my life. I was, as you described, treating myself like a circus, ate like trash, rarely exercised, used alcohol as a stress crutch, cannabis also. AG1 is what gave me the kick in the ass, got me back to the gym, motivated me to do more for myself, family, my business, etc. Keep doing what you do. Now, I know there's some skeptics, the same kind of people who think Elon Musk is a fraud, reading this going, what do you thought? There's no way that's possible, bro. It must be a placebo effect. Believe it or not, this is a recurring theme. If you give your body everything it needs to feel and perform its best, including having a lot more energy, you'll need ways to use that energy. For me personally, that includes more exercise, moving my body more social activity, and more cognitively demanding tasks, including producing a ton of exclusive content over on Twitter and on Patreon, plus my daily YouTube uploads. The proof's in the pudding. On to another testimonial from a viewer of this channel. SMR, you asked me to provide feedback on AG1. Here it is. It has helped with mental acuity, stamina, and intestinal waste management. Can't read between the lines. It certainly helps with regularity and digestion. That's what the digestive enzymes are for. It has also dramatically reduced my cravings for sugar. You guys need to stop eating sugar. It's fucking poison. I'm 50, 5'9", and overweight, aka a fat motherfucker. I think that's a technical term for overweight, isn't it? Is it fat motherfucker or obese? I can't remember. I average 100 hours a week in the West Texas oil fields as a safety supervisor. Jesus Christ, dude. No wonder you're struggling to keep your weight under control. 100 hours a week. Brutal. It has helped me lose weight. It is not an appetite suppressant. It can help fat people suppress cravings, and motivation to be healthier is critical for changing your diet. Love you, brother. Again, this is a great point and something people really don't seem to grasp. If you have more energy, everything becomes easier. It's like turning on easy mode for life. A few years ago, before I was taking AG1, my health was trash. I was struggling to get through the day, had afternoon fatigue. The last thing I wanted to do was either use my brain or move my body. Didn't have the energy. Now, my biggest struggle every day is figuring out ways to use that energy. I'm exercising way more, doing a lot more with my friends and family, and of course, my work output has increased substantially. And you can fact check me. Check out the average length of my videos I was posting to YouTube 3 years ago. Need I say more? And one final testimonial, love this one. Okay, here's the deal for me with this AG1 shit. I'm 41 years old and not the type to eat, drink, smoke, or sleep healthy, so I was skeptical. That being said, here's what I experienced. Day 1, meh. Day 2, afternoon fatigue was about 45 minutes late. Day 3, 0 afternoon fatigue. Day 4, 0 afternoon fatigue plus extra energy. Day 5, again, 0 afternoon fatigue plus energy, wondering, what the fuck, really? See, this is the thing, right? The results for many people are just almost too good to be true. This is the same experience I had. My afternoon fatigue just vanished out of nowhere. I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Why am I not tired in the afternoons anymore? Surely, it's not that AG1 is it? Turns out it was. Day 6 and 7, same thing. Day 8, same thing. Plus, I had the want to get things done around the house that I normally would slack off and not get done. Again, the point, extra energy, you'll need to use it, you'll find ways to use it. Day 9, 10, and 11, and today is day 12. I fucking love it. So however you managed to get me to buy it, I'm so glad you did. Thank you so much, SMR. It really changed me so far. Guys, this shit really works. Just try it. By the way, this is the reason I continue to relentlessly promote AG1. A lot of people get real fucking mad in the comments. Oh my God, Snake Oil Salmon's sold out. Oh my God, he's a scammer. This is fraud. But constantly, I'm pretty sure everyone making these comments is also currently short Tesla stock. I'm not particularly concerned about people having a negative perception, those folks suffering from small brain syndrome, still living in my bum's basement syndrome, etc., writing mean comments, claiming AG1's a scam or it doesn't work. I mean, bro, when I get feedback like this is what keeps me going. And remember, there is a 90-day money-back guarantee. There's nothing to lose here. Just try this stuff for a month, and if you don't get these results, get your money back. See, it's a literal no-brainer. It's an IQ test at this point in time. Testimonial after testimonial after testimonial like this. Get your money back if it doesn't work. Just try it for a month, and if it doesn't work, get your money back. Today's the day. It's finally time. Be like this guy who was a massive skeptic, but finally, after 1,000 promotions in a row, caved in, tried AG1, and has results like this. Head to athleticgreens.com/SMR or click the link in the pinned comment, and please, let me know how you're feeling in a few weeks' time. Now, if you'll excuse me, time to put my extra energy to good use. I'll be recording some more exclusive content for Patreon and my Twitter subscribers. So click the links in the pinned comment. See you over on Twitter and or Patreon, and don't forget to grab your AG1. Love ya.